All right, so last time out, actually the last couple of times, or two times in the last couple of videos or whatever, I've been taking a look at this 4-core 8-thread Xeon processor that originally I was just going to drop in that Dell Optiplex. It's a slimline, I think it's a 3020. I stuck an RX 6400 in there, just a slimline, one-slot video card. And the results for that were about what about what you expect. Then we tried something a little different. Okay, by something different, I mean, I went ahead and got another motherboard, and I put this in a different case. Now, I think I also did a video about that where it actually worked, and it worked the first time out, and it really, really surprised me. But this was geared toward actually letting the Xeon stretch its legs a little bit, and seeing if I couldn't get better results with a more mainstream or mid-performance type graphics card than that 6400 that was cramped in that Dell Optiplex. So I went ahead and I ordered a Dell Optiplex 9020, or a motherboard out of a 9020, some adapters to get it going, and I let her rip. I put her in that pink case, and I will give you guys a breakdown on how much all this cost in just a few minutes. But what I found kind of surprised me, because again, we have the GPU as the bottleneck. So what I did with these tests, instead of showing 1080p or instead of showing 1440 and 1080, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys 1080p, 900p, and 720p. That's making the CPU actually work more than the GPU, and we're actually get some results that we can kind of say, all right, now this is the CPU having to work, and these are honest results. Now keep in mind that by doing this, I'm not going to compare this to the old 4-core Intel i5 that was in the Dell Optiplex. We're going to go ahead and put this up against a 10th gen i3 4-core 8-thread and an i5 from the 11th gen 6-core 12-thread. So we're going to see how it works against newer type platforms, and both of those are going to be on the same motherboard. Now the Xeon is going to be on the other motherboard, but as much as I could keep the same, I'm going to keep the same. Obviously, we're going to have some differences in DDR3 and DDR4, and that might make a little bit of a difference. It did not at 1080 and 1440. That's the reason why I'm showing you guys lower resolutions. And then we use an RX 480. Now, I'm going to also compare and show you guys some budget numbers. That RX 480 might not be available, but a newer RX 580 2042, I believe it is. Basically, it's a downsized, or the cut down streamers on an RX 580 comes in like an RX 570. Still a little bit better, or right around, or a little bit better performance than an RX 480, but this RX 480 was the same one I used on those other two processors to kind of compare them. So I used it on the Xeon just to see. Now I went ahead and started testing at 1440 just to get an idea of, okay, a lower resolution with a mid card that's about typical of what you would see in a build like this. But the numbers were so close, they were within a frame of each other, or 2 frames of each other, and it was definitely margin of error. So what I'm going to go ahead and do, like I said, is I'm going to go ahead and put these at 1080p low, 900p low, and 720p low. So that way you guys will have an idea of how these look at lower resolutions. Also keep in mind that the higher generation, the 6-core from 11th gen, it isn't normally meant to be running at 720p. It's got no reason to, no thought about it. So everything is optimized for higher resolution, better video cards, and all that stuff. So that being said, that might explain why some of these results are a little weird. But even with both systems having 16 gig of memory, the older Xeon having DDR3, the newer ones having DDR4, things were a little weird. And we'll go ahead and start out with Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which looked normal. It really starts off normal enough, and it looked pretty decent, and it looks about the way you would expect it to look. Now there is some drop off, and you can see a point of diminishing returns with that Xeon. You can also see that in when we go to Borderlands 3, you can see that, but then you get a little bit of weirdness because the 4-core 8-thread 10th gen actually outpaces the 6-core 12-thread from 11th gen. Like I said, this might be due to that newer architecture not necessarily looking to be doing something at those lower resolutions. You would think it would, but this is not the first surprise we see. Far Cry 6 sees the older Xeon continue to fall back a little bit. Again, you can kind of see where it drops off. And then in Forza Horizon 5, the 11th gen actually takes a loss here. It ends up being worse than everything, and which was a bigger surprise than the way it performed in Borderlands 3 getting outpaced by the 4-core 8-thread. That I could almost see. Getting completely beat, or being beat by both the older one and the generation before, really kind of surprised me. But, there's more of that to come, too. World War Z made them, it looked pretty much normal. Yeah, it's the way you would expect. All of them had really good performance, even down. And you got to remember, these are lower resolutions, 1080p low, 900p low, 720p low. You're normally not going to play at that low anyway, but even at those resolutions, everything looked good. So even 1080p and 1440 are not really a problem with this title with any one of these three CPUs. And then Horizon Zero Dawn. I usually call this the great equalizer because no matter how smoothly things are going or how weird things look, this is the one that always just makes me scratch my head and look. And in this case, they all looked about the same. So I really, when I looked at this, I had to go back because I had some differences in some of the other tests. And these all three being so close, I had to really go back and look because I make the joke about it being the great equalizer, but guess what? It equalized. Assassin's Creed Valhalla sees the 11th gen chip take another loss, which is surprising. Forza Horizon 5 and Assassin's Creed both showing that this chip doesn't keep up with the other two at those lower resolutions. Don't know quite, like I said, what the deal is with this. It does surprise me some, but by the time you get up into these frame rates, it doesn't really matter too much. But in any case, it's not a limitation of the GPU when we're down at these resolutions. This is all CPU, and the 6-core just didn't quite keep up like it was supposed to. And then Cyberpunk looks like a perfect stair step. It looks like you're going off a ski slope or something, just straight down at a great angle. It looks about like you would expect any normal set of numbers to look, and we go right back to what Shadow of the Tomb Raider looked like. It looked pretty normal and what you would pretty much expect. This did the same thing. It ended up being pretty much what you expect. Then for our esports title, CSGO, I did this at 1440p high and 1080p high. Again, it's about what you expect. They're all solid. No problems there. It's not going to cause any issues whatsoever. And there's no need to play either one of these at a low resolution like 900p or 720p. So the numbers, they were a little confusing. I expected to see diminishing returns on the Xeon, and that's the reason why I went ahead and tested down at those resolutions. And in some cases you saw where it would stall out like 82 frames per second or 84 frames per second, or there would be a slight change from, say, 79 to 84 or something like that. And it did. It got to the point where it's doing all it can do without the GPU's help, and that's all it's going to do. What did surprise me was the 6-core and the 4-core, 10th gen, 11th gen, kind of going back and forth a little bit. Wasn't really expecting that. Didn't see those numbers when I was testing before because I was testing those two with GPUs all at 1440 and 1080p. I never thought to test them this low to see if there might be some differences or start looking into why that might be the case. So is the Xeon a loss? No, Xeon did great. If I had to go down to these resolutions to test against these other two CPUs, then a mid-range GPU is going to be just fine for that. The answer, quite frankly, is if you feel like doing it, yes. Now, you got to remember there are two different types of Xeon processors. Well, two main types of mainstream Xeon processors. You're going to have an E3 version, which is the smaller one that usually fits in the same die or the same board as your i5, i7s, whatever. And then you're going to have a larger one that's the E5. That's meant for a larger board. That's usually on X99, X79, one of those boards. It's not going to fit into here. So I was lucky enough to find the motherboard, the Dell motherboard that I got some adapters for. That was $18. The processor itself was like $28. All the adapters were between $7 and about $20. I got a 256 SSD. I think you can get those for like $15 or $20 now. The budget case you can get for around $45 or $50. Might not be the best case in the world, but you can always upgrade the case later. Same thing with a budget power supply. You want to buy it from a reputable brand, though. You want to, if you're going to buy something, get an EVGA, get a Thermaltake, get something 40 or 50 bucks in that price range. Don't go off and get some name you've never heard of. It would be better to spend a little bit more on the power supply than maybe on one or two of your other components. And you always kind of mix and match these a little bit. The memory, I think, cost me 19 bucks. The GPU we'll talk about a little bit here, because you can get a budget, basically an RX 570. It's called an RX 580, and I believe they call it a 2042 or something. That's because the number of stream processors was cut down from 2400 or 2300 down to that lower number. Basically, it's almost the same as an RX 570. You can find those in all day long, anywhere from $88 to about $120, $130. So if you're looking at trimming a little bit of money here, you might buy one of those you find for $100, and it might last you until you can get something better or better case or what have you. But bare bones, everything down, if you watch your budget, even including tax. I think some of the numbers I've got up here, I don't remember which ones included tax and which ones didn't, or which ones are just estimates. But all of these are reasonably priced, and all these are prices that you should be able to find. And you should be able to build a system like this for about $350. Is it worth it though? Because for about $400 or $450, you can go with the 10th gen or 11th gen if you're watching your money a little bit. You're going to pay for the same things. You're going to pay the SSD is going to cost the same. The case is going to cost the same. The power supply is going to cost the same. So some of those things are going to be similar, and you might be able to find a used motherboard that's on sale for $40 or $50, whereas buying this one and getting a bunch of adapters cost me about what, 50 or 60. So you never know. The only thing that's not really included here is the CPU fan. You can find those anywhere from $10 to $25 to, if you're getting a really, really nice one, say you are getting 11th gen or 10th or 11th gen or maybe even 12th or 13th gen, you might want to buy a better one. But we're not really talking about buying 12th or 13th gen if you're talking about spending $350, are we? Nope. So it is something that you can pull off. If you have, I mean, you might even have some of these parts laying around. Say you've got, you're building something else and you've already got DDR3 memory, or you already got a case you want to build in, or you've already got a power supply that you know works, that you trust. Who knows? You can get, any one of these, any combination of these things will work out for you. It's not that big of a deal. It's not hard to figure out. And although this isn't a tutorial on how to sit there and put this thing together, there are plenty of little hints, tips, and stuff like that about how to use these adapters for these old Dells. There is one thing that I still get on this Dell, and it's even with the adapters, I get an airflow sensor. It's like a warning. I have to hit F1. I just haven't got the cable, or I don't know if I'm going to put a fan or hook it to the diode or whatever I'm going to do. I haven't solved that yet, but if that's the only thing I have to worry about is hitting F1 when I first start the computer up, most of my computers, once they're on for a little while. I don't usually turn them on and off and on and off and on and off. Who knows? So I'll get around to fixing that and figuring that out, but still, $350. And most of the stuff I already had on hand. All told, all I actually spent to do this was around, I don't know, $70 or $80. So was it worth it to do that? Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it was fun too. And it was surprising to see what kind of results I got, especially compared to 10th and 11th gen processors. Now these are Intel chips, the older Xeon and the 10th and 11th gen. But I will tell you that the AMD 5600 is one thing that I looked at comparing it to the 6-core 12-thread 11400F. And it did pretty well using the same video card, the RX 480. So you're going to get similar results if you're using, say, that RX 580, 2042, or an RX 570, however it comes up. You're going to get pretty similar results with a mid-tier GPU. There's not much to worry about there. And you might even be able to find a better deal with AMD, I don't know. But in this case, with the experiment that I was running, trying to use that Xeon processor in the small Dell Optiplex, didn't work so much in there. Didn't work any better than the other processor I already had. So I figured I'd put it in a new case and let it rip. And I'm glad I did, because it ended up being pretty cool. I don't know what I'm going to use it for. This might end up being the computer that stays at my sister's house. I don't know. I don't know. It worked out a lot better than I expected. We'll put it like that. much, much better than I expected. So if you found it entertaining at all, found it helpful or anything like that, go ahead and throw a like on it. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit me up on all the other socials. I got a totally non-tech related blog that's on buymeacoffee.com. I will have some information pertaining to this video and some of my methods and all that stuff on ThatPaulGuy.tech in the blog section. And as always, if you don't do any of that stuff, do one thing for me, and that's be nice to somebody. Smile, wave, hold the door open, say good morning, just anything. Being nice, being kind is absolutely free. Doesn't cost you any money to be kind. And you have no idea what kind of impact it can make on somebody's day. So if you don't mind, if you don't do anything else, just do that one thing, okay? Anyway, until next time, when I have no idea what's coming up next. It might be that thing back there on that dresser that I've been trying to mess with. It might be something else. And I better figure it out quick because I got more videos coming, right? Maybe I know and I'm not just telling. Maybe I know and I'm just not telling yet. Yeah. When I learn English, I'm going to really like talking. So until next time, I'll see you later.